Welcome to the MyWhoosh Sunday Race Club. Off from the go, quick start here today on MyWhoosh for qualifier number 1, and the start is already blistering. See another attack as we take our left hand turn, come sweeping around here, and you can see in front this big climb is going to put the pressure on it yet again. Further back, it's over 2.5 minutes to the chasing group behind. And this is where the pressure goes on that UAE clan team. And the man who looks to be stepping up is going to be Mr. X100. He's taken the mission on himself to go close that gap. As we see this group going up onto the climb now. Bruce Bird has won on this climb. The first qualification the last time around. Ollie Jones the winner. In fact, it is SS who's gone with Mare chasing. So Mr. X100 just getting dropped back down. SS has gone across the gap. These two need to work together now. They have a 5-second gap. Popovich won't work. He's going to sit back. He's going to try and let everybody else do the work. Sees watts per kilo are lower. He's just sitting there in the group. The leader's gone again. And this time Pablo Popovich goes on the attack. He's been answering the attacks from Philip Graves, which is leading them through. I think Popovich is going to take this. It's going to be the UAE clan team who are going to take race victory. Pablo Popovich takes the win. He's in position number 1. Who's going to come in behind? It's Ollie Jones. We said he was quiet. He comes through for 2. Male goes through for 3. 4 is going to be Grace. 5 will be Mr. X100. Subject confirmation.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Sunday Race Club. My name is Jeff Thorne. I'm going to be filling in for our awesome announcer, Matt Payne, who is out doing some real-life races this weekend. So it's awesome that he can get out and do some real-life racing there. Today, qualifier race number 2 here at the Sunday Race Club. And it's so awesome to see how many people we have back with us to take on this new format of racing that we have going on now. Up on the screen now is today's course preview. Looks like a little bit of a TT style stage in the front. And then of course we have some nice elevation, some nice mountains in the back. Total distance, 45 kilometers, max elevation gain of 904 meters above sea level. 7 segments as always. First 5 are going to be 1K and the last 2 are going to be 10Ks. We're going to see who is going to be finishing at the top here at the end of these stages. See who's racing with us today. See if Mr. X100 can find himself in a good spot towards the end. Maybe with the likes of Pablo Popovich, SS, Jason Osborne. We'll have to go ahead and wait and see until the end. Typically it favors those boys that I just mentioned. And this is a grueling stage. It looks pretty easy off the start, but it's definitely not. So for our Category 1 team, we have UAE Clan Team 1, UAE Road Warriors, Danish Pavlova, Team Draft, Yorkshire Pudding Express, Community Sport Club, Next PB Insured, and Albus Le Cool. Up next for our Category 2 teams, we have X-Pro, DS Team, Salam Bike Shop Team, Team Italy B, Climbers, and Category 2 version of the UAE Falcons. And moving along to our Category 3 riders today, Renegades, CM Team, SBS, Team Italy, and Team Binancal. I knew I was going to ruin that one. Sorry, guys. I don't mean any offense. I'm just the worst when it comes to reading names in a different language than my own. So just under 15 seconds now to go to the start of our qualification round number 2. When you see at the top left of our screen, the watts are going to start to pump up here so they can get a nice fast start. I'm going to see how good it looks for most of these guys in the category 1, category 2. Off from the line they go. Crazy, hectic, of course, already. Falling here with El Mitfi, pushing over 500 watts right off the line. That is some serious watts just to get going underway here. But of course, everybody's still bunched up. We're going to start to see them spread out within their respected categories. So we'll see Cat 1 up there, Cat 2, and Cat 3. And hopefully everybody has followed the instructions well enough and you guys are riding in the appropriate category. Haven't seen any issues of that as of yet, but it's always cool. Sometimes you can see a Cat 2 guy sneaking up to the tail end of the category 1, and they can go ahead and start to make the move up to category 1 and get in on the real racing action here. So just 0.6 in, we're going to have our first segment sprint coming up here at the 3 kilometer mark. So these guys are just going to go ahead and hopefully find a really good pace. We'll see who's going to go for the segments this weekend. I haven't been announcing in quite some time, so I'm going to be a little rusty off the start, so hopefully you can bear with me. I'm not as great as our man, Matt Payne, but he's got big shoes to fill, so I'm going to do my best in order to do that. So far, just about 1K in, we can start to see the Category 1 guys starting to get nice and grouped up. We still have some Cat 2 and some Cat 3 guys in the mix as well, but I'm sure eventually they're all going to start to fall back to their respective categories. Some people to watch today, I think we're going to have to watch out for SS, Pablo Popovic, of course, all the guys from the Danish Pavlova team who've been super successful racing on our platform. And it's always cool to have them come back. And of course, Mr. X100, Jason Osborne, Michael Kunsen there from Denmark. These guys have been putting on a great show for us so far since we've been going on with this new format of racing. I've been putting together all the weekly race recap videos, so I get to see exactly what's been going on and kind of understand who's going to pop off when, who's going to go for an attack. But now here we're watching Yosef Badu from our Category 1, and up top here, so far in first place at 1.7K in, Michael Kunsen. But of course, it's too early to call out first place. Everybody's just going to kind of get through this, get down to the finish line. And that's where we're going to see some real fireworks pop off here at the end, probably around, 43 kilometer mark, 44. We'll start to see some people throwing some gaps down, trying to get away from everybody. But so far we have Kunsen, Graves, Midge Ferry, Tim Cutler up in there as well, Mr. X100, the usual suspects here on Sunday Race Club. And it's always so fun to see where they all end up here towards the end of these mountain stages. These mountain stages are so exciting for me to watch when I get to do the race videos because I always kind of guess who's gonna go win. But these guys here always put on an awesome show for this particular stage we have here today. So just 600 meters to go then till the segment number 1, Desert Sprint 1. We're going to see who's going to be going for that, if anybody at all, with this being a little bit more of a downhill section of the course now, all the way up until about segment 5. And then about segment 6 is when we start to get up into the mountains. It's going to be interesting to see who's going to do what here on these segments. You can see at the top right of the screen, we're at 0 meters of elevation, minus 0.1 of elevation right now. So it's pretty flat, a little bit of downhill. Hopefully these guys have a good tailwind. But watching Yusuf here, some guys are going to roll through the start here for our first segment. You can see at the top left, the numbers when they turn green. Michael Kunsen now, has a really good draft. So you can see the numbers at the top left are black, and once they turn green, it means you are in a drafting zone. So similar to what you can experience in real life. We try to offer a legit racing experience here on MyWhoosh. It's ever developing, ever evolving. We always listen to our riders' feedback. So if you guys have any complaints or any ideas that you'd like to see implemented in game, we are always eager to hear so we can go ahead and better the platform. So through the gate now, kilometer 3.4. They have just about 500 meters to go to the end of this segment. Doesn't look like anybody's really popping off the front there. Not sure who really cares about these segments this early on. But so far, everybody's sitting pretty nice and tidy together. Mr. X100 now on screen with a good little bit draft there. It's hard to see who he was drafting off of, but everybody's nice and tidy together. One little guy going off front here, but I don't think it's really to take the overall segment win. Could be wrong. So it's Michael Kunsen there from Denmark. We'll see once they cross through the line here. He probably did get that segment win. Nobody else was really going for it. We'll go ahead and wait to see the results here. Michael Vink from Danish Pavlova, Michael Kunsen there in second place. Just 0.7 seconds separating those two guys there. And then third, UAE Clan team rider Safid Safaris. Fourth, Mr. X100. And fifth, Richard Keller there from Canada. But as I said before, I don't think these early segments really do much for our riders here. I think it's all about positioning yourself well to get a good sprint towards the end of this course today. With a total elevation gain of 904 meters to hold some gas in the tank, so they can go ahead and deploy at the end and get up that last kicker of a climb. This kicker climb on today's course is wild. So now back with the group here, 4.7K in. Next segment, sprint segment number 2, coming up at the 6 kilometer mark. Still have Michael Kunsen there out front, just by 2 seconds there on Mitch Ferry falling behind. Don't really know if Kunsen is trying to do anything right now. I highly doubt it. I think he's just setting up in his pace, and the group will catch him when they are ready to. So I don't think Kunsen's really going for an off the front attack this early in, only 5Ks in. So as you can see now, rejoined by the group, and he can kind of fall in, see those numbers turn green, and get some draft action. But for some of you who are actually riding with us today and listening into the commentary, you know, sometimes it's harder to ride slower than at your own pace, or they're faster. So I think that's all we can expect there from Mr. Kunsen. And here we have a Cat 2 rider hanging on to the tail of the Category 1 group. So maybe we'll see Agit Salman move up in the coming weeks. See how long he can last up here in the Category 1 group. And of course, if he ever gets caught up, he can, of course, fall back and get caught by his team that he has started with. But now here we go, 500 meters from the start of segment number 2. Field starting to stretch out just ever so slightly. We have about a pack of 15, 16 guys here, stringing out quite nice. So here we go, rolling through the start gate now. To see who was at the front of that. We got Yusuf Bedo trying to catch back up. He might be going on a full-blown attack to try to get this segment number 2 win. Pumping out over 500 watts there. Mr. X100 there. Jason Osborne's in there. Jason Osborne loves to just sit in these packs. He doesn't really care about these segments. That man is a well-established climber, well-established esports racer, as are his teammates there for the Danish Pavlova team. So I'm sure those boys will just be kind of hanging out. Maybe one of them will pop off for a segment here. But if I'm a betting man, I'm going to guess around segment 7 is what they will try to go for, if any of them really suits those boys there. So 6.5 in, 500 meters to go. We saw someone putting on a light attack, got caught back up to the group. Hasn't really gone past just yet. But that early attack, pushing over 500 watts, could have been enough to secure segment number 2 victory. It's just in sight here, just about under 200 meters to go. Got eyes on Mr. Osborne there from Germany. Philip Graves. SS, Mr. X100 there. Now people are starting to come through. We'll go ahead and see what the results are. Community Sport Club rider Yusuf Badu, 1 minute, 15 seconds. Yorkshire Pudding Express rider Tim Cutler and his teammate Philip Graves taking the 3rd spot there. Danish Pavlova, Michael Kunsen in 4th place. and Yorkshire Pudding Express rider Mitch Ferry. So we got 3 Yorkshire Pudding Express riders in the top 5 on the end of segment number 2. And of course, now we roll on because segment number 3, another 1 kilometer sprint segment, is coming up here at the 9 kilometer mark. So now the boys have a little bit of time to kind of chill out, recover, unless you're Osborne and those boys. You guys are kind of always doing that, it seems like, until you get up to the mountain stages. Sound like a broken record, sorry. Let's see here. So more people through. Results have not changed. So Yusuf still taking the first place there on segment number 2. So here we are back at the front of the group. We have Tim Cutler, who has put a pretty good gap on the guys already, about 8-second gap, and we're only 8.1 kilometers in. So it's going to be interesting to see what he has planned, what he's got up his sleeve here. 8 seconds off the front is a pretty substantial gap this early on. Maybe he's just going to try to go build up some speed, knock out this segment number 3. But again, it's still pretty early on. Still pushing over 400 watts there. Just over 47 meters above sea level. So this could pay off for Tim. We've seen this tactic work a little bit before. Go for an all-out sprint and get 20, 30 seconds on the group, which is not easy to do. He very well could be a lone rider off the front for the entire day today. But the chase group with the likes of Osborne, Mr. X100, Keller, Mitch Ferry, all of those boys, I'm pretty sure they will reel him back in pretty easily. As we can see on the left side of the screen, Tim Cutler now coming through pretty soon to the start of sprint segment number 3. Again, just another 1 kilometer segment. After this, we'll still have 2 more before going into our longer 10Ks. And on the map in the top right, you can kind of see the gap that he has there. Pretty substantial. It's hard to see. Yeah, the gap is still sitting around the 7 to 8 second mark. But now we have the chase group with Mr. X100 and them all through the start gate as well for segment number 3. So we're going to see how this plays out in just under 700 meters or so. Still have our category 2 rider there on the right side of our screen, hanging on to the Cat 1 boys. Super awesome to see. The more you train, the better you get, and you can start to move up into the appropriate categories. So 400 meters to go for Mr. Tim Cutler there on the left side of our screen. He was gone on a little bit of a solo breakaway with the chase group just behind him, only by about 100 meters, which is easy to reel him back in. Unlike Tim, they all have each other to work off of. They can get some draft. Tim is just a lone soldier there out in the middle of the road all by himself. But as he comes through this checkpoint, we'll see who's got the overall result. Wait for our chase pack to come through. Now, so there we do have it. Tim Cutler did take the win for that segment with a total time of 1 minute and 20 seconds. Community Sport Club rider Yusuf behind 1.21 and draft Bruce Bird 1.22. Trying to do the maths here. Everybody's super tight up together there. I wonder if this tactic is going to pay off for Tim going off the front there. Looks like we had a couple more results load in and nothing has changed. So back to the action, of course. Congrats to Mr. Cutler there for taking segment number 3 on his little solo breakaway. He's now opened that gap up to it keeps shrinking and growing ever so slightly. I don't think it's worth reporting on just yet. We still have a long ways to go to see if that's going to pay off for him here. Qualifier race of the month of May. We have this group here working well together as always. This man, Mr. Jason Osborne, Esport World Champion, Olympic rower, Bob Ross painting fan. He is a big fan of Bob Ross. I made that last part up. But Jason, he is no stranger to esports racing, as he's proven to us time and time again, winning the Winter Solstice Championship, many races before that as well, before I was able to sign on with our esports events. So it's always great to see these guys be so consistent, coming back each week to race with us. Tim Cutler there. Now the gap has grown to 11. But again, this is going to take us a while to see if that will pay off for him. And if it doesn't pay off, it's okay. He finishes, and he can maybe try it again next weekend for our third qualifier race. As you know, you have to complete 3 qualifiers in order to compete in the final cash prize money race at the end of the month. Split screen open, of course. We have Safid Safar's right there. Nice little draft there off of Mr. X100. Mr. X100, who has been improving quite well himself, as I've seen from doing all the race recaps. He's been finding a really good position towards the end of the stages here. So hopefully today he can do it again. Again, with this punchy climb at the end, this really separates the men's from the boys. I'd definitely be in the boys category if I was racing with you guys today, but this climb is extremely punchy, and it always offers a bit of exciting racing. So on our way now through 300 meters past the start of segment number 4. This is a pretty flat out TT segment. Tim Cutler is in the sights there of Mr. SS. You guys have a really good advantage. Like I said earlier, they get to draft off each other, keep an eye on their watts, and so they're going to go ahead and suck Tim back up into their group. Hopefully Tim doesn't get spit out the back. He can kind of sit in and recover, use the draft a little bit. So the finish line for segment number 4, just under 200 meters away. Mr. X100 on screen now. A little bit of a different kit and different bike setup today for Mr. X100. I wonder if he's trying to blow, kind of blend in a little bit more, maybe throw everybody off their game. Let's see. So segment number 4, draft Bruce Bird. Second place is Yusuf Badu, and third place Philip Graves. Fourth place Mr. X100, and fifth place Michael Vink. Interesting bit of the heart rates there on the far right side of this Bruce Bird, 18. And with Yusuf just below 1, well in the threshold, and Philip in the 130s. Interesting to see how different everybody's bodies reacts to these things. So 13.6 in the next segment will be our last 1 kilometer segment, that being segment number 5 here at the 15 kilometer mark. We'll go ahead and let these boys truck on a little bit, and I'll be back with you before the start of segment number 5. So now just rejoining you guys for the start here of segment number 5 at the 15K mark. So just 200 meters to go. Mitch Ferry in the front there. Saeed, Richard, everybody kind of getting along really well here through our last 1 kilometer segment for today. We'll see if anybody's going to try to pop off and take this one. As you can see on the top right of your screen, we are starting to gain some elevation. Now we're at 2.4, currently 84 meters above sea level. Not for these guys currently on screen, they're only about 53. But for our main group there, they are up into the 80s. So their legs are going to start to feel these inclines, that their trainers adjust to the road gradient. So now 91 meters above. Nice little false flat section here. Let the legs recover. So here soon, I think we will start to see some action from these boys on our left. Not to discredit our Category 2 riders. They, of course, are doing very well at the moment. Currently 13.8 kilometers into our overall 45K race today. So Mitch Ferry and Tim Cutler working together there a little bit off the front, just about a couple seconds ahead of Richard Keller, Mr. X100, and the little chasing group. So we'll see if these two guys are going to work together, get through this stage, and maybe start to put on a little bit of attack going into stage number 6. Mr. X100 there leading the chase group. Kind of all alone up there, but now he's got some draft, which is good. Oh, segment number 5 is taken over by Mr. X100. That's an interesting change of events there. Tim Cutler in second, Mitch Ferry, and Bruce Bird. So nicely done there by Mr. X100, UAE clan team. Total time there, 1 minute and 23 seconds. 2 seconds ahead of Tim Cutler from Yorkshire Pudding Express. That's very well done. Heart rate around the 140s. 440 watts, 6.2 watts per kilo. Same there as Tim Cutler. But nicely done there by Mr. X100. I did not see him going for a segment. Maybe he didn't mean to, so it's even a good surprise for himself. But now that segment number 5 is done, we have our first 10-kilometer segment coming up here at the 20-kilometer mark. So these guys have a couple Ks to sit in, recover, especially Mr. X100 if he wants to find himself in the right group at the end of today's stage. He's going to have to be doing a lot of drafting and really race smart, as he has been doing, I've noticed, over the past few weeks. But today, even more so with this course that we have here. The guys 97 meters above. I'm just having a quick look at our course map. Yes, we are going to start to go up ever so slightly. Somewhat of a false flat. You can see on the top right-hand side, the little map there, there's a little gray zero, gray box with a white 0. So now it's at -0. But typically, that's going to show us the gradient that they are currently riding at. So now they're on a nice little bit of a flat section. But this section all through here between stage number 6 and stage number 7 can be a little bit of false flat. It can really do a number on the legs if you're not careful. So this is the time I feel I would be sitting in, drafting, keeping pace up with everybody else around me, saving a little bit of gas in the tank for segment number 7 and beyond. Of course, the most meaningful segment being the finish line, if you will. And as you can see there, the course now on our screen. So they're going to start to go up there towards segment number 7. And after segment number 7, the party begins. And we'll get to see who has it in them today, who doesn't. Hopefully everybody has been riding and recovering well since last weekend. I know you guys don't just ride with us and then hang up the bike until next weekend. I know you guys do outdoor training and all that good stuff, as you should, with how beautiful the weather is now getting across the world. Unless you live in the UAE, it's just getting too hot, and then you have to be riding indoors. Let's see here now, 18 kilometers in. Mr. X100 on the left side of our screen there, sitting in ever so nicely. And then Jason Osborne in there as well. As I said before, our usual suspects, someone who I haven't seen at the top of our charts so far has been Pablo Popovich and SS. Typically, those guys, and Mr. Bruce Bird, can't leave out Bruce Bird. They're usually at the front, but maybe they are saving their legs for a really good sprint finish. This segment here, this overall course is no stranger to these guys, so they kind of have it down to a science, I'm pretty sure. But we'll see who has it in them coming up here soon. So just about 1.4 kilometers to the start of our second to last segment today. So now on the left side of our screen, we could start to see a little bit of a breakaway, currently showing our Category 3 riders. But there started to be a little bit of a breakaway there. It was hard to see. It looked like Mr. X100 was charging. But once we are done taking a look here at our Category 3 guys, we can go ahead and get back to the front of this race action. So there we can see on the left side, we have Mr. X100, Mitch Ferry, trying to make a little bit of a breakaway. If we can go ahead and open that up full screen, we can see if they have any time on the chase group behind them. As we're soon approaching the start of segment number 6, which is about 400 meters. So Mr. X100 and Mitch Ferry there. A little bit of elbows out, going side by side here as we're starting to roll through the checkpoint number 6. Looks like they have about 6 seconds on Chaser SS. And Juan, Safid Safares, Tim Cutler back there as well. So they have about 6 seconds, 7 seconds on the chase group as they roll through the start line for our first 10K segment of the day. Everybody else is kind of popping through as well now. Currently 110 meters above sea level. And this section here is going to be pretty fast for them. They're at a minus 0.2. So minus 0.2 on the elevation. So they have a little bit of a downhill right here. It's going to allow them to spin it up. You can see 409, 410 watts there from Mr. X100. Cadence around 60 to 70. And now we have the chase group now coming back up to them. So these downhill sections, you can really draft quite nicely. Everybody can work together, pick up the cadence, spin out the legs, all before we are getting into the mountains. So now you can see the gap that Mr. X100 has formed with the help of Mitch Ferry and Tim Cutler. Just about 3 or 4 seconds. So I imagine they're going to get caught up there by the group somewhat soon. Only 800 meters now into segment number 6. And they are approaching fast. Now, as Mr. X100 gets out of the saddle, he's got a little bit of draft there from Tim Cutler up ahead, but he looks like he's falling out of that draft zone. And Tim Cutler, Mitch Ferry are still going off the front, charging pretty hard. Mr. X100 now being absorbed by the chase group. This is a good opportunity for him to sit in and do some drafting, maybe a bit of recovery. But of course, this group is not going to want Tim Cutler and Mitch Ferry to get off the front there too far away. Keep it in a sustainable range to where they can close that gap and then start to do some work together on the upcoming climbs. So Mr. X100 there, still getting a nice little draft there from teammate SS from the UAE. And that gap is closing down between them and Tim Cutler and Mitch up there as well. So they are starting to reel them back in ever so slightly. So now the two guys off the front starting to come into frame a little bit more for our chase group. Did a really good job there by upping the pace, catching back up to them. But what they could also be doing is upping the pace of the pack, hopefully trying to do some surges, get some people tired. But for the likes of Mr. X100, Jason Osborne, Bruce Bird, I'm sure they're just now starting to warm up appropriately, hanging on to the pack while they can, and then start to launch some attacks here. So now we have Jason Osborne throwing a little bit of attack there. Tim Cutler answering that back. Jason Osborne not making too much of a gap between himself and the chase pack there. Mitch Ferry behind. They go ahead now and pass Tim. So now we got Jason off the front there. It looked like with Mitch Ferry. They look like crazy attacks, but if you actually look at the numbers up top, they're still only pumping around 300. Most of these guys, when we start to get into the climbs, and you'll see in the sprints, will be upward of the 7 to sometimes 1,000 watt range. So not saying 300 is slow by any means, but they're still not popping it off too hard at the moment. We can see on the right side of our screen now a mix of our Cat 1 and Cat 2 boys coming through the start here of segment number 6. It looks like a good gap is forming there on our left screen. If we can get our race director, there we go, to open it up. Who's off the front there? Mr. Cutler again. Mr. Cutler really doing a lot of work today off the front of this race. Interested to see what his tactics really are, if they will pay off here at the end. We're approaching the halfway mark. Actually just passed it. My apologies there. But Tim Cutler now 7 seconds off the front, similar to what he did earlier. It's never grown past 7. The chase group has been able to kind of keep it down ever so slightly. We can start to see it grow almost to 9 seconds there. Off the front of the chase group, Mr. X100 from the UAE clan team. He's also putting in a lot of digs today off the front of this group. Hopefully that pays off for him as well in the end. We're just about 4 kilometers into this 10-kilometer segment. The pace of the packs are really starting to pick up across the board, even all the way down to the Cat 2 and Cat 3 guys. Here we have Tim Cutler still off the front. 7 seconds back to 2 chasers, being Mr. X100 and Saeed Safar. And the gap back to them to the third chase pack, which is going to be SS, is about 3 seconds, give or take. So now everything is starting to kind of string apart. I'm excited to see how this plays out for everybody as we start to come into these closing kilometers. Did not expect a big string out so early on in the race, if you will. Still we're only 24.4 Ks into today's 45K stage, but typically I see these guys staying nice and tidy together all the way up until the end to the mountain stages, and then we start to see them break apart. But now we have Saeed getting ready to catch the second chase group there. And he has, and they have now caught Cutler. Saeed's now off the front, just a second ahead of Cutler. We'll see if these 3 riders here are going to kind of stick together and work together. In the chase group back there, Mr. X100, Philip Graves, SS, Bruce Bird, Michael Vink from Danish Pavlova, Jason Osborne's back in there somewhere as well. But it's quite the big gap that these guys are starting to establish now. And if you're this man, Jason Osborne, you're going to kind of want to be up at the front of this race as we start to get into the higher elevation. Currently 129 meters above sea level. Just approaching the single digits here of elevation gain, or percentage of elevation, as you can see at the top right of our screen. And you can see also on the map in the top right, everybody's super spread out. There's quite a big distance there between this man here and the rest of the main chase pack. Upwards of about 10 seconds, excluding Tim Cutler and Saeed, who are just behind. So we're just about, let's see here. Yeah, just about 4Ks now to the end of our first 10K stage, that being number 6. These three gentlemen working very well together at the front. Chase group there being led out again by Mr. X100, putting in a lot of digs off the front of these groups today. Now the boys are going to get a little bit of a downhill section here. We'll start to see the cadence come up. Watts will probably drop ever so slightly. So that chase group there on the right side of our screen really working hard to try to reel in those guys off the front. They have them in their sights, which is good. They're not super far away. It's still about 8 seconds to Mitch Ferry and Saeed and Tim Cutler. Philip Graves now creeping in, making that a group of 4. So here we are back with the chasers being led out still by Mr. X100. Trying to see what the gap is. It's almost 10 seconds now to this front group, which is pretty substantial, but it's not the end of the world. They can, of course, work together and close that down. And they can all be within a pretty good fight for the finish. Segment number 7. All of that good stuff. Now Jason Osborne now in a little bit of a pack by himself. Sorry, not by himself, but with Philip Graves. Who else is in there with him? Okay, so they're not too far separated there from that chase group. So they're all pretty much still together now, trying to run down Mitch Ferry and the boys up ahead. Just about 1.6 kilometers to go to the end here of segment number 6. We're going to roll through this little bit of a vacant town, make a right, and then we'll start to see the finish line up ahead. Bruce Bird on the right side of our screen, shown just briefly. A little bit off pace today. Maybe he's had some really good training sessions outdoors this week. Or maybe it's part of his tactic. Just hang out, try to get some draft, and recover for the climbs up ahead. So now just 800 meters to go to the finish line of this segment. Going to be interesting to see who takes this overall segment win, if it's going to be our pack who went off the front, or if it's going to be someone within our chase group. Chase group has been doing some pretty good surges, so maybe they've put down some really good numbers there in order to cross the start checkpoint and finish checkpoint in the fastest time possible. But I do have a feeling it'll be one of these guys on our left side of our screen who's going to take the overall win for segment number 6. As we find out here, just in about 500 meters, 400 meters now. And they have a nice little uphill. As they make their way to the finish line. Mr. X100 now working with SS. Bruce Bird in the mix there as well. Don't know if Bruce Bird was going to go on a little bit of an attack or if he was just making sure he stuck with those guys. So now checkpoint, finish line to segment number 6 in the sights. We'll see who's it going to be taking this victory. So those 4 guys through, and we have our first chase group, Bruce Bird, SS, and Mr. X100 through as well. So it is going to be one of the guys from the chase group, Philip Graves from Yorkshire Pudding Express. Total time, 13 minutes, 47 seconds. But at no surprise, you see Saeed from the UAE clan team there in second, and third, Tim Cutler as well, Yorkshire Pudding Express, all separated by fractions of a second. Interesting to note, the heart rate, Philip Graves, 142, Saeed, 158, and Tim, 174. So the watt numbers are all pretty average as well. So it looks like these guys could be very much well sticking together all the way until the end. And then they have a little bit of a break now between segment number 6 and segment number 7. Only about 3 kilometers or so. But I don't think we're going to see them relaxing, soft pedaling, or anything like that as we approach our last and final segment and then on our way to the finish line. So I'll take a little bit of a break and I'll come back to start segment number 7 with you. So now we are underway with our main group coming through the start line there of segment number 7. We got some people still chasing up behind them. And this is going to be our last 10K segment of the day, ending at the 43-kilometer mark. And then they'll take us home for the last 2K and probably all-out sprint to the finish. Philip Graves here on screen with Pavel Popovich, Tim Cutler. So this is going to be the group to watch out for sure. Everybody doing great jobs today, getting through this brutal course. Interested to hear what you guys think is the hardest course that we offer here on Sunday Race Club. Or maybe they're too easy and we need to make them a little harder. But for this one, I think this might be the hardest course. Depends on who you ask, of course. On the right side of our screen there, Juan coming in, starting his segment. Falling off just a little bit there from the pack. Jason Osborne there on a solo mission, about 500 meters back from this chase group. That's going to be a really hard gap to close on his own with nobody really around to work with or to draft off of. So hopefully something can happen with this front group. Maybe they start to back off the pace ever so slightly. But that's a real tough position to be here at the 34-kilometer mark. Just be a lone man all out there. Left side of our screen, one of these guys, they are going to take the overall victory for today. We have Mr. X100 now up into the front group here. Really good stuff from him today. Doing a lot of digs off the front, like I've said. Not an easy thing to do, pulling the pack up to these different groups. But he's been doing it so far. And so far, he's in a pretty good position as long as he can maintain this throughout segment number 7 and, of course, through the finish line. So segment number 7 starting then for most of our Category 2 guys. You can see we have a couple Cat 1 guys in there as well. So now they're going to start trucking on with their final segment of the day. So coming up soon, we are going to start to see around, about right now, 35K mark. We're going to start to see some real elevation coming up. Start to see a lot of the avatars out of the saddle as our guys here really start to put the watts down. Michael Kuhnsen there. He's kind of fallen way back today, unlike him. John Brune there from the States as well, and Ryan. Last week, these guys were in really good positions within the front group. Today, not so much, but maybe this course does not suit their riding style, and that's totally fine. As they know, they just need to finish in order to make it to the next qualifier, that being number 3 next week. So it's okay to suffer through, sit in the pack, because the only race you really have to win is our final prize race at the end of each month. So it's okay. Those boys are sitting back there and just getting through today's stage. So the guys on our left side of the screen here, now 35.5 kilometers, just 100 meters. They're going to go ahead and take a right and then a hard left and start going up the mountain. That is basically modeled off of Yeba Hafit. And I've probably said that. I think you know which mountain I mean. The last and final stage of the Tour of UAE, and we saw Tadej Pogačar win. And of course, if you everyone have a look back on our materials from that race, on some of the coverage behind the scenes access, we do have some fun YouTube videos to watch. And hopefully we'll be doing more of that coming up soon with the Tour de France. Unfortunately, we were not able to make it out to Giro d'Italia, but I'm sure most of you guys are following that action throughout the week. Such a great classic to tune in and watch. So here now we have Pavel Popovich, everybody working their way up the early stages of this climb. Most of these guys have done this course so many times, so they know exactly how it's going to go. You can see in the top right, 212 meters and gaining of elevation above sea level, and a 5.5% incline. This is straight up, for me, it's like a wall. For these guys, I'm sure it's nothing less either, but now they look at that into the double digits now of elevation, and Mr. X100 going off the front on a little attack here. Don't know if it was an actual attack or if he was just getting out of the saddle, getting up and over this. A little bit of a false flat, and they're going to take a right up to the tip top here. Again, double digits, 14.9% gradient. You can see the watt numbers on the top left creeping up into the 600s for some of our guys here. This climb is absolute madness. When I was in the UAE covering the UAE tour, there was a cycling race going on for all the locals. So they start at the bottom and they go up. And I thought my driver was definitely going to hit one of them because these guys were squirreling all over the road, just really having a hard day. So in real life, this section of road is a beast for sure. But once you get to the top, you have really awesome views over the desert. Some cool, fun stuff to do up there as well. Nice little restaurants and shops. So if you ever make your way to the UAE, I highly recommend bringing your bike and trying to climb this thing for real. So Mr. X100 there, going back up into the front. Philip Graves, Bruce Bird, SS, Saeed. The usual suspects at the end of our stages mostly. So it's going to be interesting to see who's going to have enough gas left in the tank to get themselves up and up to the finish line. This segment is no stranger to Mr. Bruce Bird from Canada. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's won this stage since I've been tuned in with our esports racing events. I think he's won this stage 3 or 4 separate times. I think it was just a couple weeks ago he went on a solo breakaway and claimed victory all by himself, which is really great to see. But now these guys, 12.8% gradient, 337 meters above sea level here. Max watts on the top left. Luckily, they're a little bit in the green, so some people are drafting. They are getting a little bit of help from the game that we have here. Saeed now on his own. 4-second breakaway here at the 37.1 kilometer mark. This is where we're going to start to see some action for sure. Mr. X100 trying to answer the attack, and these guys are going to try to go ahead and keep him in sight. Right now, they're climbing up 2 to 4% gradient. And this climb is a beast because you have these really steep inclines, and then you have these little bit fast downhills, short and sweet downhills. And then it's just going right back to up and up and up. So right now, 4.1%. Everybody's sticking together quite nicely. Mr. X100 still in there. And we have Pablo Popovich back there a little ways. So those guys off the front there, they have about 10-second gap to the chase group. So it is for sure, if they can maintain this speed and maintain this pace, they will for sure have a really good finish line coming up here shortly. Currently just ending one of those false flat downhill-ish sections, and now they're going to start to go right back up again. 5.2% gradient now, 400 meters above elevation. Bruce Bird at the back, making his way up to the front. I think we're going to see a lot of swaps on this. Everybody's trying to find their own pace. This is such a grueling climb. You can't really pay attention to everybody else around you. You kind of just need to get into your own pace and hope that it works out. So currently on Bruce Bird now. All the guys so close. The avatars just passing through each other. Really great racing from this group so far in the final stages of our second qualifier race here for May. Kind of see the top of the mountains off in the distance there. The avatars look like they're just really grinding this section out. 7% gradient here. Mr. X100 off to the side all by his lonesome. Still getting a little bit of draft help. Currently 400 watts. 5.4 watts per kilo. Some of the other guys there in the sixes. So now Saeed off the front there with Philip Graves. It's hard to really say off the front at this point because everybody's sticking together so closely. But they're not really doing any lead outs or real major attacks right now. Everybody's just kind of keeping themselves in check, in good position. So we're now at the 39-kilometer mark. So just about 6 kilometers left to go. And soon we're going to start to see the elevation kick up even harder. So now they're already 514 meters above sea level. So Bruce Bird there looked like his avatar was making a little bit of an attack, but I think it was just the momentum that he got from the little downhill section there. And our Cat 2 and Cat 1 rider mix is just now entering the climb for themselves. But so far, at the front of our entire race, SS still, Philip Graves, Saeed, Bruce Bird, Mr. X100. And the chase group back behind them, Mitch Ferry, Papa Popovich, and Tim Cutler. All those boys 20 plus seconds back. So they're not going to be catching these guys anytime soon. A little sad that Tim Cutler isn't up in this group. He's tried so hard to be at the front of this race so far all day. But again, there's always the next weekend. So there's Philip Graves now, and you can see on the road up ahead, they're going to get some more incline here pretty soon. Currently around the 300 watt range, and they're going to start to creep up to probably 5s or 6 pretty soon here on this massive climb. 7% gradient as of now. And you can see in the rear view, nobody else really there to challenge these guys. They are all off on their own. So it will be one of these 5 riders that's going to take victory here for our second qualifier race of May. Nice that we have our timings back to normal. So it's not super late, but during Ramadan over in UAE, it is definitely necessary, as these guys can't eat or drink if they are practicing Ramadan. So it'd be really tough for them to get online and race with a full empty system. No water, no food, no anything. It's very impressive to see most of these guys that live over there in the EU, or the UAE, and that practice Ramadan to hop on at night. They probably just have a little bit of time to stuff their face with all their food, get on the bike, and hopefully try to have a good result at the end. So now they're getting ready to crest this climb here at a 5.4% gradient. It's going to start to drop off, and they'll get a nice little recovery for the legs in hopes of keeping some of that momentum up for the next little hill. So segment number 7 now is going to be ending within 2.8 kilometers. And from there, we just have 2 more kilometers to go until the absolute finish. Mr. X100 there, Philip Graves, Saeed. Looks like they're trying to open up a little bit of gap on Bruce Bird. But I think it's not going to last very long. I think it's just due to the changing elevation, how it's kind of a roller coaster road at the moment. So yeah, just as I say that, Bruce Bird back up into the front there. So he's not going anywhere anytime soon. SS now at the tail end of the pack. Might start to see something from him very soon. Might go on a very hard attack. As I said, watching back through the past races while I make the race rewinds, he kind of is known for going off on these solo attacks midway up the mountain. There's currently just under 5 kilometers to go. SS is in a really good position in order to make an attack, and we just have to see who has the legs to answer it. These guys working really well together all day. Currently 731 meters above sea level. These guys must be planning something with themselves, maybe with their teammates. Maybe you guys have each other on Discord and you guys are able to talk to each other a little bit, get a good plan of attack. Pretty soon, I think we're going to start to see some solo breakaways. Mr. X100 there in a really good position to answer anything. I don't know if we'll see him go right off the front this soon anyways. It's about 4.5 kilometers to go until the finish line and 1.5 until the end of this segment. Don't know if it's going to be anybody in this group who's going to win the segment overall. There's still a lot of people that need to come up and over it from the Category 1 group. As you know, it's not about who crosses the segment finish line first. It's who had the overall fastest time from start to finish. So we'll see if anybody here has that. So now Philip Graves and Saeed breaking up the group ever so slightly. As they're getting ready to come through this tunnel here. Pablo Popovich has gone off the back. We'll have to see where Mr. X100 and everybody else is in relation to Philip Graves and Saeed. So he looks like he's about 4 seconds back. All these two riders swap around. So Bruce Bird, Mr. X100, and SS all together there. It looked like a lot bigger gap than it actually was on the timing screen here. So it's nice they're still all back together. 700 meters to go to the finish line of segment number 7. And it looks like we have a breakaway here from Saeed, 7.6 watts per kilo. Up into the 8s now. Philip Graves answering the attack based off the information on the right side of my screen. 8.9 watts per kilo. Bruce Bird, Mr. X100, not really going for it. But maybe these guys are just going for the segment win. It's hard to say at this point. Just 500 meters to go into the finish of segment number 7. And it's these two guys that are putting on pretty good show. 3 seconds ahead. 3 seconds clear of Mr. X100 and Bruce Bird. There's the finish line in their sights. And there's Mr. X100 still within striking range for the overall finish today. Hopefully he has some gas in the tank to really unleash and finish in the top 3. But these two guys, Philip Graves and Saeed, super strong riders, super consistent as well. There's SS now leading out Mr. X100. So through the checkpoint they go. These 5, we can go ahead and see who it is for now. Mr. X100 surprisingly taking the victory for segment number 7. Total time 18 minutes and 46 seconds. Teammate SS just behind him, same time, basically, and Bruce Bird in 3rd for team draft. Of course, we'll have to wait for those results to get confirmed, as there's still a lot of people behind them that need to come through in the Category 1 group. But now we are rolling on. The segments are done for the day. 7 segments done and dusted behind us. Now we have just the finish line up ahead to look forward to. If we open up the left side of our screen there, Mr. Picard, we can kind of see a breakaway happening. So there we have it. We have Saeed and Philip Graves off the front. Putting a couple seconds again on Bruce Bird and Mr. X100. Of course, Mr. X100 and Bruce can still see their avatars up ahead as we're just approaching 1.1 Ks to go to the finish line here. We'll see who's going to make a break for it. It could be a battle between Mr. X100 and Bruce Bird for that third spot. It might be Saeed and Philip Graves off the front claiming 1 and 2. So it's going to be kind of nice. We can have a double race here. Double race sprint finish to the line. It is all to play for right now. Inside 1 kilometer to go. 800 meters to be exact. 868 meters above sea level. Philip Graves there on a little bit of a cool down maybe. But now he's up onto the tack. He's up on top of the pedals there. Mr. X100 currently on screen, 6.7 watts per kilo. Saeed's going off the front there, 7.8 watts per kilo. He's saying he wants this victory for our second qualifier race here in May, but Philip Graves is not letting him get too far ahead. Just 400 meters to go now until the finish line. They're going to go ahead and make a right-hand turn. They're going to have a nice steep climb all the way up to the tip top there. As they come around the bend, 300 meters to go. They're going to go through the arch. You can see the finish line in sight now. 8.7 watts per kilo for Saeed. 5.97 now for Philip Graves. Philip Graves isn't letting him get too far ahead. Now they're going to break it out for the open sprint here. Philip Graves currently ahead of Saeed just ever so slightly. Saeed now coming through, leaving Philip Graves behind. There's Philip Graves now back on the screen. He's going to come through and he's going to take victory. Sweet, sweet victory from Saeed on our second qualifier race here. And now we got Bruce Bird and Mr. X100 coming in and rounding out our top 4. Amazing stuff there from Philip and Saeed. So there, Philip Graves taking the overall win on our second qualifier here at the Sunday Race Club. Saeed there in second place. Look at the time difference between those two riders. The exact time all the way down to about 0.6 seconds. So that was a really good sprint finish for them. And then as well as Bruce Bird and Mr. X100. So congratulations to you guys. Go ahead and wait for SS now, who's going to round out our top 5. He looks pretty safe and comfortable there all by himself. He's got no one really charging him or attacking him, so he can go ahead and slide in and claim that 5th position. So now SS rolling through the line, rounding out our top 5 for the UAE clan team. So we have 3 riders from the UAE clan team finishing in the top 5. And of course, the winner, Philip Graves for Yorkshire Pudding Express, and then Bruce Bird for Draft Team. And we have Mitch Ferry there. He still has a bit to go, about 400 meters to go. Again, he looks pretty safe. He doesn't really have anybody behind him who's knocking on his door, trying to take away his 6th spot. So now he can barely start to see the finish up ahead as Mr. X100 and them start going back down the hill, get a little bit of recovery ride going. So really good stuff there from our top 5, top 6 guys. Interesting to see them get so strung apart. I thought we're going to have a really good group with the likes of Jason Osborne up in there, throwing it down at the top of this mountain stage today. We have Pablo Popovich here as well. He still has 500 meters to go. And we got Yusuf, 600 meters to go until the finish line. So now just awaiting the rest of our top 10 finishers to come through the line. Yusuf on screen now. Pablo Popovich just ahead of him. So now we can see on the left side of our screen, some of our guys still trying to make their way up the mountain at the 41.3 kilometer mark. But this is where we'll leave you. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the Sunday Race Club qualifier number 2. And next week, we hope to have our awesome announcer, Mr. Matt Payne, back with us. Thank you guys again, and we'll see you shortly for the women's race.